Travel is more than just ticking off countries. It's about the people, the culture, the food, the moments. I'm Pippa Hudson, and on Wonder the World, I invite you to join me every week as we explore destinations both near and far, with the help of fellow adventurers who share their unique travel stories. Listen to my podcast wherever you get them.
Hanging Out with Clement
on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
So on our Hanging Out feature today, we've got author and businessman Elias Masilela. He's a man that wears many hats. He's a former CEO of the Public Investment Corporation, former commissioner on the National Planning Commission, currently chairs several major boards, including Multichoice. So much to talk to him about. And if you want to weigh in to join this conversation, remember you can always call us on 011-883-0702, or you can send us a WhatsApp voice note on 072-702-1702. Mr. Masilela, thank you so much for coming through to our makeshift studio now at the convention center. How are you?
I'm very well, sir. I've just said I think I prefer this than being in the studio.
Why? Is the studio more
real?
Yeah, it is. It is more real. You know, I was thinking to myself, as I was going through just what you've done, and I thought, what has he not done? Do you have a lot of people who ask you that? Because you've set out some really important boards. You've been CEO at the PIC. You have done some incredible work. And I wonder, out of everything that you've done, is there something that's always been so fulfilling for you?
Look, I never see it as having done stuff. I see it as having served. And the reason probably why I ended up in these many areas is because I focus on trying to find solutions for challenges that are facing society. It's never about me. It's never about trying to leave a legacy. It's about changing lives and making sure that whatever you do when you leave, the people that you are engaging with have their lives changed.
I like that approach too, because so many of us, and we spend so much time trying to think about legacy and curating it. That's why we even often ask people, what legacy do you want to leave? Because people are intentionally thinking about it and they're curating it. But actually, when you walk into environments to change lives, actually that ultimately becomes your legacy. So there's no curation that's needed. It's just you being a leader and changing lives. And when that's your mission, people are impacted. And in one way or the other, that is a legacy.
No, that's true. As soon as you say, this is the legacy I want to leave, you've changed the narrative. It's now about you. It's no longer about the next person. And this typically happens amongst politicians. When they raise their hands to come and serve, they say, I want to be a politician to serve society. But as soon as they get into position, they want to be served. And that is a contradiction that I cannot reconcile. I spend a lot of time in the policy world, and I've never been able to understand that.
That's fascinating, and we'll get later on to just because I wonder because you've been in government, you've been in the private sector, and I wonder what you think could be the lessons that people can learn in government, seeing that you've been on both sides. Let's talk a bit about your upbringing. You were raised in Eswatini, right, formerly Swaziland, but you've moved around in South Africa before you went to Eswatini. Just take us through that childhood, how you were moving around, and what was the context of your family at the time?
I have very little of a childhood in South Africa. My parents left when I was only a year old. And the reason they left was in protest against Bantu education. My father and my mother realized that it is tough to live a life with no education. And they concluded it probably is a worse life to live with Bantu education. Now, our father, Tongo, only went up until standard 2, and our mother, Umakhomu, whom we call Umagogo, went only up until grade 2. So they really struggled. And they had this vision that said, we want our children to be better than us. And that's why they worked to Eswatini today, but I typically call it Swaziland because that's what I grew under. And we got the education that they thought we deserved. And at every point in time during our lives, they used to remind us continuously, Bantu bam, asina mali, or we're poor. Therefore, don't expect an inheritance from us. Your only inheritance is your education. If you throw it away, you'd have thrown away your future. So that's how we're brought up.
So your mom was an activist. You grew up in a home that, when you look at number 43 Trelawney Park, this is a house that was maybe a base for some of the operations during the armed struggle. This is a house that was really spoke volumes in as far as the liberation of this country is concerned. How were you impacted by that? When you're seeing these activists that are coming in and out, when you're seeing the passion even on your mother about wanting to see a new South Africa, how did that shape your own ideology and view of the world?
The concept of the description of our mother being an activist is probably an overreach. She ended up where she ended up by default. They literally found themselves at the crossroads. They never planned for it. And how it happened is a very interesting consideration. Our father went to the Second World War. As part of his demobilization program, he asked to be trained in bricklaying. Temba location as it stands today was built by him. The bulk of Soweto today as it stands is because of his hands. So when he decided to leave for Swaziland in 1965, there was something in the mind of the average Sowetan. Everybody knew him. Everybody knew Tom. We only learned about what they thought about this migration 11 years later. June 16, 1976. When there was the uprising and a lot of children or young South Africans had to be taken out of the country, all those coming out of Soweto were given one message. Mntwanam, hambu yeswazi, ufune bakwa Masilela. They will know what to do. Now, in the mind of the Sowetan at that point in time when the family left, 1965, was around the Rivonia trial. They concluded, if Masilela is going to Swaziland at this time, he must be a politician. He must be ANC. He's going to set up for the ANC in that country. So we're settled with tens of children just showing up at the doorstep, all with the same message, which really baffled us. So at any point in time, you would find 10, 20, 30 people just staying in the house. And it became the key receiving point for everybody who was leaving, for most of the people who were leaving the country. And the responsibility that we are left with as a family was to house them, feed them, and coordinate with the ANC on the one side and the PAC on the other. And we ended up with one question that would ask them, ANC or PAC? If they wanted PAC, they went just behind where we were. Because PAC was, I think, slightly more organized than the ANC in exile. They were very active in their mobilization program. So they saw the importance of number 43 and set up shop immediately behind number 43. Who was
doing the coordination?
It was my mother predominantly. So this is why I'm saying she, by default, became the activist that you call her.
Well, wasn't it risky? I mean, for any family that does that during that hectic time of apartheid, it's risky because once the apartheid government gets wind of what's happening there and how the house is now a base, they could have very much come for the family.
At the time it was happening, we didn't think about the risk, I think. All that we thought about was informed by how our mother responded to the situation. At some point when King Sobhuza departed this world, the ANC was banned from the country. And that basically meant the only point of operation was number 43. So unlike other houses which were underground, this one operated above ground. So it was known by the all sides of the war. And what became very interesting is that we asked exactly the same question that you're asking. Why isn't this house attacked? Why are the children not arrested or kidnapped like all other people? And we only learned towards the end of putting together the manuscript of the book number 43. We had the good fortune of interviewing a police officer that operated with Eugene de Kock from Swaziland. And we asked him, why did you ever attack this house? And he said to us, very simple, we would never attack a house that housed people who worked with us or who worked for us. That meant we stayed, slept, dined with the enemy every single day. But it was not too big a surprise when he revealed that to us. Because the biggest defection in the history of the ANC, the defection of Glory September, actually happened at number 43. But at the writing of the book and at the launching of the book, it was very interesting. Two senior officials, actually more than two senior officials of the ANC, actually argued that what was saying about September in the book is not what they know. In their mind, they know September having been a sellout from day one before he joined the ANC. And I asked the question with one of them, so why was he allowed to rise in the ranks? He defected as a commander. That's how high he went. And it was a very interesting indictment for us of what the process looked like. So before we published the book, we had to get a sense from the ANC whether or not they are comfortable with that part relating to September. And their response was a very candid one. And the response was, Bo Masilela, we cannot change history. If this is what happened, let it be published. And we're actually very pleased with that response because September became almost the common thread across the storyline of number 43.
That's fascinating. What's the title of the book?
The title of the book is number 43, Triloni Park, Kwamagogo.
Kwamagogo.
But
Kwamagogo.
Yes, okay. Interesting, there was a spin-off from that book which was written by an academic. And the title of that book is Askari. And what he's trying to do, he's trying to work out why number 43 classified Glory September as an Askari. And using that analysis and interpretation, he replicated that definition across all leadership of the ANC and leaves it to the reader
to make
the judgment. Yes.
Yeah, fascinating. I really want to read this book because it really sounds fascinating to me. I want to go to some of your favorite songs and then I will come back and continue this conversation. Shall we start, Abel, with Amatotana Aseweseli? Tell me why this is one of your favorite songs. Amatotana Aseweseli, Matsohong Ahao.
It's one of a favorite song of mine, of the family, because it was the number one song for our father, which he sang twice. When our elder sister passed on and was buried, and when our mother passed on and was buried. So it's a very spiritual song for the family.
All right, here is Matsohong Ahao by Amatotana Aseweseli as we continue this Hanging Out feature with Elias Masilela, an author and businessman. Oh, what a song. This song is not going to age, eh? It's never gonna age.
It won't.
So when I asked you what is it that is why this song, you went back to it's a favorite song, but it's also a family song, and you really sound like someone who believes so much in those family values. What is it about the family that has you believing so much in it? I mean, I know it's an obvious question that it's family. All of us love and appreciate and want to stand by our family values. But what inculcated that for you?
I've never thought about it from that perspective, what it really means. You know, when you find something and it resonates with you, you just keep building on it. So for us, the family has always been this cocoon that protected us from all negative externalities that we experienced in our lives when we're in Eswatini or Swaziland at that time. There were very few South African families in the early stages of the kingdom. And we're very close as South African families in that country. And we looked after each other very closely. When the onslaught grew from the apartheid regime and it started crossing the border to other parts of the region to carry out their operations, the closeness of the family became more and more important. What is fortunate for us, nobody died directly from those onslaughts. The only nearest or closest to that was our sister of ours, Grace, who survived the Matola raid. But that survival, or that escape from the raid, scarred her for a greater part of her life. But as a family and as South African families in the kingdom, we were protected by the unity of family.
Yeah. All right, it's going up to 10:30. We're going to get the latest in Eyewitness News headlines in a moment. When we come back, I see some of your WhatsApp messages that have come through, so I'll get to them as we continue this Hanging Out feature with Elias Masilela, who's an author, who's a businessman. So if you want to give us a call, 011-883-0702. Maybe you've worked with him at some point, somewhere, in many of the places he's worked at. You're welcome to send us a WhatsApp voice note as well on 072-702-1702.
Hanging Out with Clement
on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
All right, it's 25 minutes before 11 o'clock. We are hanging out with Elias Masilela this morning on our Hanging Out feature. He's a businessman, he's an author. He, at some point, was the CEO of the Public Investment Corporation, a former commissioner on the National Planning Commission, and currently chairs several boards, including Multichoice. I've got some of your messages coming through on the WhatsApp line on 072-702-1702. The WhatsApp, you can also call us on 011-883-0702. Let's start with this voice note.
Yo, Clem, Tato, yo, Clem, such riveting radio. Shout out to you and Bra Elias. I want to thank him for telling the story, because I don't think we tell enough of our own stories. I'm certain 90% of our stories haven't been told in a way that they can be carried on by the next generation, or turned into movies, or even turned into series. So, Bra Elias, shout out, my dude. What an inspiration. And as someone that grew up in the 80s, living with exiles, playing with the children of exiles, there was a neighbor with someone who was killed by a car bomb. That history is not told enough. So thank you, Bra Elias. Hopefully you'll inspire others to continue telling these stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that WhatsApp voice note. Mdu on the WhatsApp line says, Clement, I actually know a house in Ngwane Park, Manzini, not far from number 43, about 10 minutes drive from number 43. The house in Ngwane Park had bullet holes, but when I would ask as a kid, I was told that it was a comrade's house. I never used to understand what they actually meant, only to find out years later that it was the house Zuma stayed and ran away after a tip-off. That's why when they came, they just sprayed it with bullets thinking that the comrades were inside. The saddest thing is that the very same people are now running to the United States because they hate transformation. That's a message there from Mdu in Johannesburg. Do you know about this house in Guanepak?
Yes, I do.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What do you know about it? So there were several houses then in Swaziland, hey, that were a base, so to speak.
We are very careful when we write number 43 that it's only a drop in the ocean. We could not even tell the story of ANC in Eswatini or Swaziland then. We only told the story from a number 43 perspective, which is a very, very thin sliver of the information that you can get. So this house, yes, was a very instrumental house that hosted some of the operatives. It ended up being, that attack ended up being one of the biggest raids in the history of the kingdom and the ANC in the country. The second biggest raid came with assistance into number 43, assistance from the apartheid regime in South Africa, where they literally came in by helicopter to try and find the mastermind behind the Pretoria Church Street bomb blast, Unkosinati Maseko, who operated from number 43. And amongst all the operations that were planned, launched, and celebrated in number 43, that was the only operation where, as a family, we cried for two reasons. One, we knew it was a suicide mission. There's no way you can come and plant a bomb in the city of Pretoria at that time and hope to come out unscathed. Two, it's because relatives were involved in that operation and we knew we're not going to see them again.
Yeah. What are your reflections on this country now, many years after what you have witnessed with your family, even at number 43? Because there were hopes and dreams about the future of this country at the time. Anybody who was fighting for freedom had the support of most people. When you sit now in May 2025 and you reflect back to the sacrifices by other people, including your family, and you look back, what is your reflection of where we are?
That's always a very difficult question to answer. I've been asked the same question many times. There are two aspects of dealing with it. The first aspect is that a liberation process is very different from governing a country. And I can conclude by saying the ANC in exile is different to the ANC in South Africa for various reasons. So it becomes very difficult to do a comparison because you're comparing uncomparables. But earlier on you asked about family. And the key difference for me in exile and being back in South Africa is that the family unit was significantly upheld in exile because we needed each other. We came back home. I presume other things intervened, and the family unit and the togetherness was lost. So trust in exile was very different to trust here. Honesty in exile was very different to honesty here. What the variables are that have informed the change in those patterns, it becomes a very big thesis that one can write. But I think one of the biggest challenges that we need to work on as a country is bringing back honesty. Lead for honesty, with society at heart. And that for me, I think, is the biggest thing that we need to worry about.
Yeah, there was a question also on X, someone who says, Clement, I know Mr. Masilela served as a commissioner on both the first and second National Planning Commission of South Africa that was looking at the long-term development strategies for the country. Can you please ask him about his role there and what he makes of the fact that some of the targets that they worked on at the time have actually been missed?
Yeah. The Planning Commission was building on a journey which started with a multi-year budgeting process. And that was to create certainty in the minds of economic agents in the country. When the budget was a one-year cycle, it made it very difficult for individuals and corporates to plan. So we then introduced in the 1998, 99, 2000, we introduced the multi-year budget, which would be a 3-year budget that allows people to plan for 3 years instead of planning over 1 year. And that would then mean both the government and the private sector would have a medium-term expectation or medium-term intervention in the economy to get what the economy wants. Then the plan then goes to say 3 years is still not long enough for a country. We need something like 30 years. So that is when the Planning Commission was put into place to give a longer-term view. Now the targets that he's talking about are actually not indications of what the country would achieve. What the targets are saying is, if we want to reduce unemployment from 30% to single digits, this is what we have to do. If we want to reduce poverty and dependency, this is what we have to do. And the prerequisite, some of the prerequisites that are in the planning document are: 1, savings should go up to above 20%. Investments should go up to above 20%. The productivity of the public service should be enhanced. Service delivery should be heightened and consistent over time. The economy should grow at 5% for a sustained period of time before you can see the outcomes that are being built into the plan. And what you also see in the plan is that there's not a single budget line in the plan. The logic behind that is South Africa has all the problems that we're faced with are not of a financial nature. They are of a management or governance nature. If we can change the way in which we manage the economy, the way in which we govern the economy, without throwing an additional cent into it, we can actually get a better outcome. And this is based on comparative analysis. If you look at the resources that are directed towards education, health, transport in this country, relative to other countries similar to South Africa, the rate of return is much, much lower in South Africa than what you see elsewhere. And it's just the numbers talking. It's not even me interpreting. So that means, as South Africa, we missed an opportunity to build a resilient economy post-1995, an economy that would withstand negative factors or externalities that we don't have control over without affecting the country negatively.
Is there still hope?
A government, a country is a going concern, always a going concern. So we should always be hopeful.
Just the last question from what I got on Twitter as well before we go to the song and the next break is, Clement, please can you ask him about what his thoughts are as the board chair of Multichoice on why the Multichoice has been bleeding customers. As the board, what do they think have been the biggest challenges for the business?
Multichoice has been very consistent in providing information to stakeholders at the AGMs, through its annual reports, and in engaging with stakeholders. We operate in an environment, so the context is always important. The product that Multichoice produces or serves to the continent is a product that is called entertainment. And entertainment in the minds of people is not a basic commodity. And what that means is that as soon as people have to make a choice between food, health, housing on the one side, and entertainment on the other, you know what the decision is going to be. So the macros have been driving the behavior of the company. The economic performance in South Africa and the rest of the continent have been instrumental. Pirating has been another variable that was observed. And if you think about it from an interpretational point of view, people like the product, but they cannot afford it. Therefore, what do? They pirate it. So all that we can do as a responsible corporate in South Africa and other jurisdictions where we operate, we work very closely with those governments to make sure that we help in turning around the economy. There's a lot of long-term interest from private sector to make sure that the economy is operating better than it is today. And I'm very hopeful that we can turn around the economies where we operate.
Yeah, it's 12 minutes now before 11 o'clock. When we come back, we hopefully will have time for another song as we wrap up our conversation with Elias Masilela, who's an author and businessman too.
Hanging out with Clement
on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
9 minutes before 11 o'clock. All right, let's go to Jonas Gwangwa now. Morwa is one of your other favorite songs. Tell me about that one.
There's a very close and solid link between the two families, the Gwangwa family and the Masilela families. But more importantly than that, the artists who were in exile were our inspiration. Even when things were difficult, they would remind us what the objective is. In particular with Jonas Gwangwa, he actually curated and put together a very interesting ensemble under the guidance of O.R. Tambo, and that is the Amandla Group. It went around the world motivating people in exile, motivating exiles, and reminding them where we should focus our attention. And that to me is a very important thing. And I'm proud to be part of the Multichoice Group because what it does, it shows how you can actually convert the arts into economic wealth. We fortunately as a family were able to recognize Jonas Gwangwa with other artists who were in exile, Elias Masilela and the like, in 2019, basically recognizing what their contribution was in the liberation process. Without them, I don't think the outcome would have been the same.
Here's Morwa by Jonas Gwangwa. Yeah, I can listen to Jonas Gwangwa the whole day. I can listen to this song the whole day. I've got some interesting messages that are coming through here I want to read for you. From Tandi, I've got a message from Tandi who says, "Hi Clement, we used to live at the same place in Trelawney Park in Manzini. Your guest sisters were at St. Teresa and the boys at, is it Salesian? Salesian School. My sister and I were at St. Michael's School. His parents and my mom were friends, especially that we all came from South Africa. Please ask him where is Laki and his sister."
She's raised a very interesting point. Because number 43 was founded on the basis of education. Schools in Manzini were critical to us. As a result, the family wrote a book about Salesian School, the Salesians, and how they've changed the world. And you cannot write a story about Salesian without writing a story about St. Teresa's, St. Michael's, and Jingo. Very important schools that most of the products are running South Africa today. To answer the question more directly, Lucky should have been here, but he couldn't make it.
Okay, so he could have been. Please bring him with next time. And then Nkosana on the WhatsApp line says, Clement, listening to your guest there just gives me hope that we still have people with high morals. Another one says, hi Clement, hello to Bra Elias there as well, my brother. This is Rhoda. Number 43 was home for so many of us. I literally grew up there. The warmth and love of that family is unmatched. I will always cherish the memories of my time in Swaziland, especially at number 43. It's so fascinating how we can have a conversation and there are people listening to us who remember that time at number 43. You guys are commemorating 60 years this year of the existence of this house that was so crucial to the liberation of this country.
Yeah, for us it's a very important year, quite pivotal. Not only are we celebrating 60 years, we are handing over to the future generation. Number 43, as we speak now, has generated or has produced 5 generations all alive. And amongst the second generation, which is our generation, we were 9 in all, but only 2 exist. And that means it is time to hand over. And it is time for the world to celebrate with number 43. Not what number 43 did, but what people of Eswatini did, what people of the continent did, what people of the world did. We were very inspired a few years back, where we never thought that number 43 was being watched. And we got an acknowledgement from President Obama, acknowledging the work that number 43 is doing. And to us, it gave us more energy to continue doing what we're doing. Now, one of the big roles of number 43 is preserving our history as a country and as a continent, is to get our children to enjoy reading, write and publish their own stories. And thirdly, to curate that house number 43 into a museum at some point.
Looking forward to the celebrations in June. Thank you so much for coming through, Elias Masilela, author and businessman, and thanks for what you and your family have done in helping this country really transition to the democracy that we enjoy today. Thank you for making time for us.
Much appreciated.
It's a minute before 11.
As the cost of living rises, from school fees to the price of cereal, you can take comfort in knowing that with Outsurance, you could save big on your car insurance. Savings that could make a real difference to your budget every month. Outsurance client Mikey knows all about it.
These guys are super fast, they're very helpful. My bank account is flexing.
Why wait? Switch and save today. SMS out to 45142. That's out to 45142. Outsurance is all about giving you value for your money. Enjoy life-saving services like help at